Welcome back, guys, to the JPS podcast, and in today's episode I'm honored to have Sumi Singh, owner of Shyla Fitness, which is named after her daughter. She's the author of multiple ebooks. She's a fitness model, powerlifter, and has been lifting since she was 12, so she has many years of experience. And in this episode of the podcast we talk about female fitness, how to break dogma. We also discuss how to set an example for younger generations and specifically resistance training for mums. Also, we talk about the importance of gaining phases for females, as well as discussing the benefits of powerlifting for women. I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and let's get into it. Sumi, the first thing I wanted to talk to you today about was female fitness in general and breaking dogma. So I'm sure that, as an aerobic and fitness instructor, that you would have heard a lot of women, be fearful of lifting weight or have some preconceived ideas and misconceptions about, what it takes to achieve the physique that they want to obtain. And that's usually, quote unquote, toned, which is, having a certain level of musculature, in particular areas, losing body fat, things like that. So how do you go about broaching that topic when, women are afraid to lift weights because they think they're going to get big and bulky, fearful of eating protein and things like that?
Yeah. So, I'll approach it from the perspective of where I see my clients coming to me. And for the most part, the majority of them are not that interested in getting big. So, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, their general idea is, how do I get toned? And they actually understand that that's actually about the losing some body fat first. Mm-hmm. So they're actually pretty comfortable with, okay, if I have to lose a couple of pounds to get there and to have that certain shape. And as far as breaking dogma, I come from a place where, as an Indian, for instance, women are not culturally attuned to wanting to get big. They want to have a nice shape. They want to still be feminine. So that's actually a good thing. Their concern is not that they're going to get big, actually. So, it's not something I generally have to fight for. I think probably from your perspective, you might see a bit more of that, but not from the population I deal with, moms and Indians in general. So.
Awesome. And in terms of the, wanting to slim down, I'm sure you would have seen many females attack this in quite an incorrect and probably unhealthy or unsustainable manner. So what's your advice to your clients when, they come to you and they're wanting to lose some fat and slim down a little bit, when they previously, think that they may need to cut out food groups, they might need to do excessive amounts of cardio. How do you attack that?
So I'll approach it from where they come from, which is they think that there's either a miracle diet or, they've heard the latest fad. They're going to have to cut out entire food groups, for instance. And a lot of the marketing towards moms is like the quick fixes. So, whether it's a certain brand that's a miracle supplement that's supposed to help them shed weight really quickly. And I turn it around and say, like, there's no such thing as a miracle protein shake. It's all the same. If you can read the label, it's, it's a matter of calories, a matter of sufficient protein, and there's no magic to it. And the magic is if they can find something that they actually enjoy, because they think that they have to suck down something that's terrible tasting. I'll say, I want you to get a protein shake. And they'll go to Whole Foods just because it's Whole Foods, so it's healthy. Mm-hmm. And then they'll buy a brand that is absolutely terrible, but because it was on sale at like Whole Foods, for instance, and they're stuck with it. They're like, no, protein shakes are terrible. I'm like, no, they're not. There's so many delicious ones. It's a matter of trying one that actually suits your flavor preference, for instance. And that's and that's a matter of any kind of diet too. Like they think that they have to go ketogenic, for instance, just because it's right now it's super hot. But that's not the case. You kind of point out, well, it's like, if you're going to eat this way, it's going to take this much fat. Do you actually like to eat that way? And they're like, no, I don't want to eat that. I'm like, well, you don't have to. I mean, pretty much every single diet is going to be the same so long as they're creating a calorie deficit. It really doesn't matter where it comes from as long as they're not cutting out protein, because if they're interested in building muscle, they're going to have that, right? So,
100%, 100%. Adherence is definitely something that's going to determine the success of a diet. And
mhm.
as I advised the listeners, and you guys are following along in the pre-show introduction, Sumi is a mother of her daughter, Shyla, and
Mhm.
something that I really love about your approach to fitness is that you want to be setting an example for her, and almost breaking the rules, so to speak, and setting the bar so high that there is no ceiling to what's possible in terms of
Right.
your physical fitness, and I really admire that. So, in terms of setting an example, what are some things that you want to embody as a mother, as a fitness figure for other women, and your daughter? What do you try to achieve, or set out to do on a daily basis when hey, these young ladies are looking up to me.
Yeah.
This is what I got to do to show them the road, so to speak.
I think that's a great question. I love it. Number one is to role model, because children suck it up.
Hmm.
They are listening to everything and they're watching everything. I'll go back to the example of how I was raised. I was very, very lucky to have parents that always role modeled good eating behavior and daily exercise. And it's different. Like they were raised in a different, time when it was like, okay, they may not have pushed the weights, but there was always something healthy at the dinner table, and we always sat down to eat dinner together. So there was always shared meals, and there was always daily exercise. And so with my daughter, it's like, well, there are things that I'm always trying to do on a daily basis. Like we sit together and we have a meal, because that's getting lost, in
Hmm.
today's society. We're all so busy when there's not is it only a good time to communicate and catch up, but it's about, you know, always having something that I know that she's going to have a choice. And like, would you like to have this for dinner or that for dinner? It's like, there is always a healthy meal that's going to be prepared for her. We rarely eat out, and that's a matter of choice, more so, and budgeting as well. But try to do that on a daily basis. And as far as the weight training goes, I don't believe in forcing children. I believe that if you show that you're having fun, and I actually run a personal training business out of my home, so she sees my clients here at home, and she sees me train, and she's come to powerlifting meets and that kind of thing. So she sees that we're having fun and that fitness isn't something that's forced upon her. So on her own accord, she'll be like, "Hey, I want to lift." I'm like, "That's great. Let's go. Let's do it." Um, so role modeling. Because I'm a single parent, she's always with me. So when we go grocery shopping, for instance, there's really no choice on her part. She's there. So she gets to make decisions, and she gets to pick certain things she wants to eat. So I think that it's important to role model. And if I was to say, well, you should be eating this or you should be doing this on a daily basis, but not actually role modeling those behaviors, I don't think I'd have a very good case. So hopefully that lasts, for a lifetime for her. There's no saying, she may turn out to be somebody different, but that's okay. She's not an extension of me. She is who she's supposed to be. So
Awesome. I really love that response, and I think being a role model and practicing what you preach, is something that is highly important when trying to pass on certain traits, characteristics, and just behaviors in general. And speaking to the point of when it comes time for her to attack the iron, so to speak, and when she starts being a little more interested in potentially shaping her body and all these sorts of things. This is something I've been thinking about quite a lot lately. Some of the listeners may know that I'm a father of two young girls, and I'm well away from having to deal with these kind of chats with them just
yeah.
yet. But something I've been contemplating is how I'm going to approach teaching my girls all about fitness, nutrition, body composition, weight management,
Right.
and these sorts of things, whilst also ensuring that they accept their body, appreciate it, have some self-respect and self-love. So how do you balance these competing ideals, I guess?
Right. Yeah, that body image thing is is such a stress. I mean, as a mother too, you see it everywhere in social media, and whether or not they're going to get it at social media, they're going to get it in school from their peer groups. So the least we can do is to not have it come from us. So I am not going to break myself down in front of her. I mean, I see it constantly because I have a lot of female clients who will come in and they will break themselves down into an assortment of parts, like what do I do about this and what I do about this, and different. But we don't look at people that way, And she and I will have conversations about it. She'll sometimes be like, "Well, what am I supposed to do about my tummy?" But she's very slender, and she's talking about when she sits, so she has a roll. I'm like, "Well, we all have those, And the voices that we say, the things that we say, are things that they pick up. So if I was and I don't weigh myself in front of her. I don't talk about the amount of calories and what I'm eating. Generally there's conversations about portion sizes. She'll say, how do I eat healthy? Okay. So the majority of your choices should come from healthy foods, fruits and vegetables and whole grains and proteins, the same things that we eat. So, and you can have junk food. Sure, you can have candy, but it's going to be like, maybe 15 to 20% of your diet, not like the majority of your stuff should not be coming from that sort of stuff. As far as conversations about, because she is around me all the time. And so she'll hear some of the conversations, the other women have here, and they'll ask things about, what do I do about, cellulite, for instance? And I'm like, well, we all have it. If you could just be like, this is part of being a woman, lumps and rolls and cellulite. It's just a thing. It's not something to attach negativity to. And that's the only kind of thing I think we can say as parents. Otherwise, they'll look at themselves as a collection of this flaw and that flaw. And a lot of these flaws that you and I hear from people are perceived. They're not even real or anything we would even notice unless somebody pointed it out, right?
Fantastic. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I don't weigh myself in front of my kids, even though they're only 2 and 1 and they probably don't understand. My 2-year-old is very much a copycat, monkey see, monkey do. So I make sure that the scales are not something that I use in front of her. And I think, it's one of those things that's a case-by-case basis. But, my thoughts at this stage are, to just teach them as they go and, answer questions as opposed to, making this, a part of their life unnecessarily. Or forcing it upon them, which I'm sure you're very aware of. And what I wanted to move into next was, with a lot of pressure from social media and the changes in the way that the world works in general now. Our kids are going to grow up in a completely different world to what we are, which is very scary. But the pressure to look a certain way, and obviously everything that comes with social media, that exposure to that, idealistic physique is all the more prominent now than, it was when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, Sumi. So moving forward, how are you going to, manage, your daughter's exposure on social media to, the fitness industry? Because this is, again, something that I've been thinking about. How am I going to, teach her, stemming from our discussion earlier, how am I going to teach her all these, brilliant things that, that fitness has taught me, without, having all the, I guess, the side effects of the fitness industry, and that exposure to social media. So have you thought about that?
Yes, and that's a great question. It was a couple of months ago. I posted a picture on Instagram, and it was prior to one of my weigh-ins for a powerlifting competition. So, I'm a little bit lighter. And it was, I thought it was a great photo. I mean, I looked all.
You're allowed to say that, Sumi. You're allowed to say that.
The lighting was great, abs are popping, I got tan, everything looks fabulous. So anyway, I posted this photo on Instagram, and one person had said something like, and she commented on my photo, and she said, he or she, I don't know who, it was just a random Instagram person, said, I used to like it. I used to like the way you looked before better. You were so much cuter then, and now you just look like a man. And so I thought that was humorous. And so I had a bunch of people, one Instagram friends and Facebook friends, just kind of commented and toward this person. I didn't say anything. You know, I teach and I showed my daughter like the entire comment thread, and I showed her the photograph. And of course, that's her mom. She sees me like that all the time. You know, that's she doesn't look at it as manly or whatever or cute or this is my mom. This is how she looks like, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, "What are they talking about?" And I'm like, well, this is a good conversation to have. I'm like, this is it could, and I don't want to say bullying, that's the wrong word, but this is social media, and it could be a cesspool. You know what I mean? And people, especially in our industry, are so used to commenting on what you look like and the size of your body. And I said, whether it's good or it's bad, it's not something for you to dwell on. So we've had these conversations before. So in this particular one, she was pretty surprised. She's, what are they talking about? I'm like, well, people can say whatever the heck they want. It doesn't matter to me. Like whether it's good or it's bad, it's not something for me to hold on to. If it's it's a nice thing that somebody said, great. Well, thank you for the compliment, and then you move on. And if it's something negative, well, whatever. That's not something I really care about. It's and again with social media, she's like, well, how come they're talking about your weight, right? Because it was about a weigh-in. So I'm like, well, I compete in a federation and I compete in a sport where it's a weight class sport, and this is part of it. And she's always she's always so curious when it comes time to weigh, and she's like, are you gonna grow back? Don't lose your muscle. So I think it's great. We very frequently have conversations about taking up space. I mean, to her, it's a bad thing, not a bad thing, but it's when you're smaller, it's not as good as when you're bigger. And I think that's a great way for a little girl to be, is to take up space and to not worry about your weight, unless if she thinks, in her opinion, if you're losing weight, it's not a good thing. So
I like that. I really like that concept. Take up more space because yeah, I think that's brilliant. And
it's as a father to a little girl, they're always taught to shrink away, but that's not it. You should be out there. You should be confident, and don't be afraid to speak your mind, is what I try to tell her. So it is going to get worse, unfortunately. I'm sure. We just don't know what's going to be next, right? I mean, right now it's Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook, and who knows what it's going to be in the next 10 years when they're mature. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and it's so frightening to think that, the amount of online communications and the mediums by which our children are going to be able to interact and engage with people from all around the world, almost uncensored or unbeknown to us, because kids don't like to tell their parents everything, right? It's alarming, and I think that to a large degree it's something that has to be taught, and I think more education and awareness needs to be driven into young children at an early age. And I think if you're doing those kind of things now, or if you're a parent listening to this, then it's a great place to start. And then
as parents, we're in control of setting the scenario. Like they absolutely do not have to have social media on their phones right now. I mean, my daughter's only 10 years old, and she has friends who already have telephones. I mean, I cell phones. I'm not quite ready for that, and I mean, everyone's different in how they police, what sort of electronics a child has. But I'm trying to keep that as minimum as possible. I mean, at this day and age, they should be getting out there. They should be playing. They should be talking to friends. They should be reading. I mean, being stuck on social media is not how we grew up either. So.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's funny, actually. Our daughter gets on the iPad from time to time. It's a treat, when she's, obviously, eating all the vegetables, or, been really well behaved. She gets, 20, 30 minutes on the iPad. And there's been a few occasions where we haven't, monitored very closely anyway what she's been watching. Like, we'll set her up and she just starts watching, and she's got YouTube Kids, which is obviously a filtered version of YouTube. And all of a sudden there's, videos in completely different languages, with, not that it's anything sinister, it's probably very harmless, but males, playing with, young babies and things like this in a different language. It's like, holy cow, like, even little things like that, showing her that it's okay, for, to play with, older men and stuff like that. Again, I don't know the exact context of this video, but it's just one example that, you really do have to keep a close eye on things, and especially when they're a little bit younger.
Yeah.
And something else I wanted to talk to you about, Sumi, was resistance training for mums. So my partner is obviously a mother of two, and she crushes the iron. She's a bit of a weapon. She did 3 sets of 6 pull-ups yesterday, body weight. So she lifts. She
Yeah.
squats, more than her body weight for reps and deadlifts and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I've seen to be really challenging for her, which I guess is no surprise to the many of the mothers and the females listening to this, is that time is of the essence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And scheduling can be very, very difficult, even in, our podcast today. My daughter was teething, didn't go back to bed. I was late. That could throw, if I was training, I'm fortunate that you're very generous with your time. But if I was training or had work in an hour or so, I might not be able to get my session in, for that reason. So how do you manage, your female clients who have young children, with their just unpredictable schedule
Right.
due to their kids?
Yeah. The number one thing I think you teach them is that it doesn't take that much time.
Mm.
I mean, it really doesn't, especially if they're a beginner. I mean, if you can get them started, 20, 30 minutes twice a week. I mean, if you can phrase it that way, like you just need this much,
Yeah.
to get started. And once they've gotten past that phase of like, I can do 20 or 30 minutes twice a week, that's not hard. I mean, they're sold because they already will see the benefits from getting stronger. I mean, their daily tasks will become so much simpler. And, I can sympathize with moms, especially, for a new mom, like not only is time crunched, you may not be sleeping right. And there are all kinds of things that are wrong. And so there are different ways that you can approach it. You can be like, well, if you are not able to dedicate this much time to yourself, what's that saying about your own long-term health? I mean, I firmly believe that a stronger mom is a better mom. And if you can just get them past the initial phase of how little it's going to take and how much better they're going to feel after that, I think that they'll be sold. I mean, again, I don't want to say that they have excuses because it's not true. Like there are very legitimate excuses, as you point out. You have a sick child and stuff, so it's a matter of coming up with ways to bypass, any of the things they might come up with by saying, okay, well, as a new mother, I can get it. Like a lot of people be like, I don't want to go to the gym because I'm so self-conscious. I'm still in my maternity clothes, right? Like they don't even feel like they want to be in a public setting. So, I mean, the one benefit I can provide is I have an in-home gym setting so people can come to me and it's very comfortable. They don't feel like they have the world looking on them. And I get that. I mean, there are a lot of things you can do at home. You and I know this, right? Resistance bands or dumbbells. And I have that program that my stay-at-home strong program. You can do all the weight training at home. You don't have to go to the gym. You can watch it. I mean, now there's YouTube videos, countless programs that you could just do online from the privacy of your home. Another one that I hear a lot is I'm just too tired. I'm not sleeping enough. So it's about, is there a better way that you can manage your stress or your sleep? Take a nap, enlist help. If you have a partner or a husband or somebody, a nanny or somebody who can come and just help you at least get some rest and, caught up with some self-care, you'll have some extra time to dedicate to strength training. So those are at least a couple of things that I think new moms have to deal with.
Definitely, and I'll link your ebook below so that people can check that out. It was very, very useful. I really enjoyed having a read through that. And what I wanted to talk about next was, for those women who are a little bit more time poor, maybe only able to train 2 to 3 times a week, but they're beyond those beginner stages where they'll just need some body weight or light resistance type training. What are some of the techniques you use to ensure they get an effective training stimulus and that they're actually, able to make some measurable progress in their training? Because we know how important it is to have goals and to see the, the small wins and the little success that we get by, adding a couple of pounds, in your case, kilos in mine, to the bar, a few extra reps and, seeing progress, because we know how hard it is to make, progress in the gym when we're not consistent. But how do you go about that for your mother clients?
So find out what their goal is. I mean, if you could just dig deep and get behind the real why of what it is they want to accomplish. So let's say somebody comes up with, I just want to be able to do a couple of push-ups. Like that is easy. We can fix that. We can start them on a program where they're, gradually building up to doing more than, a couple on their knees, and that's one way to do it, and show that there's progress. Again, the way I do it here is, I try to keep the sessions as short as possible because everybody is so super busy. So generally we'll do a 30-minute session where we're moving between upper and lower body exercise. So they're moving the whole time and they're feeling that they're constantly engaged and constantly moving. And, the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to beat them up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to let them, leave them feeling like they're more empowered and stronger, because as much as we joke around and, we make fun of them and we're like, are you sore the next day? It's like, that's not ultimately what our goal is, right? We want to make them feeling empowered so that they come back for more. And I think once they get in the program of actually enjoying it and it's fun, and personal training it's personal. Like, you have to match the energy level of the client, and you have to keep them motivated. So, and everyone does it differently. So I'm sure you have your own methods, and I do too. So as long as your goal is not to actually beat them up or break them down, they'll come back for more.
Yeah, I to be honest, I approach my a lot of my busy clients, or my I call them lifestyle clients, those who, training is a very small part of their lifestyle, and, they're looking to improve general health, how they feel, look, those kind of things. Very similar approach, Sumi. Antagonist supersets or upper and lower supersets, I think, definitely getting more training volume in a shorter window using techniques like that is a very useful strategy. So, for the listeners, that's always a good way to get a little more bang for your buck when you're pressed for time. So that was awesome, Sumi. And training postpartum, this is something that I thought we could have a chat about, because I know you work very closely with Lyle, and Lyle is the female physiology expert. And some of the things that I've seen with my partner when she was training after pregnancy was just massive fluctuations in energy levels. Obviously, the disturbed sleep, like you started to touch on. We sort of, briefly outlined, getting some self-care and using those around you to improve, your rest and recovery. But during those phases, after pregnancy, for the first 6-12 months, and, potentially, up to 18 months, depending on how long the mother breastfeeds and things like that. What kind of things are you looking for as a coach, when you're monitoring, just knowing that there's so much variance, in that lifestyle management?
Yeah. The number one thing I think that we all should always ask is, do you have doctor's clearance? Because you just never know where they're at in their recovery. So if somebody's had, a C-section, and they think that they're, ready after 6 weeks, that may not necessarily be true. So I would, number one above everything else, is to see if you've gotten clearance from their doctor. The other thing is, if they're nursing or they're breastfeeding, that will impact how you train them, because, their breast may be full. You may not, you have to encourage them to take more water breaks.
No plyometrics or chest-supported rows, right?
To express before they train with you, that sort of thing. So these are small considerations that you want to make them feel like you actually care about their recovery, because certain movements are just going to be more comfortable for them. So even things like, getting them up and down off the floor might, because they're having a hard time, they may be embarrassed to do that. So you really want to be aware of how they feel and how they're moving. And obviously you want to start super slow, whatever that means to that person at that time. And they may think that they're ready for, something like heavy squats, but they're not, So it's just, it's a matter of common sense. It really is. And working with them one-on-one to see how they're feeling and where they're at in their recovery.
Yeah.
Because for most of them, they just want to feel better, and that doesn't take a whole lot on our part to do. It's not going to take heavy weight training, at least not in that initial phase.
Awesome. And let's move on to the heavyweight training. So powerlifting for females is obviously increasing in popularity. It's something that a lot of women now are starting to partake in, and obviously social media plays a big role in that, and it's great to see. I coach a lot of female powerlifters. I would almost say that on my athlete roster, maybe 60% of my powerlifters, maybe 60-70% are females now, which is really, really cool. And they're varying from ages of like 18 through to, mid 40s, which is awesome. So I'm a big fan of powerlifting for females, because I think it teaches them a number of really important skills, such as obviously lifting, and then just embracing, the progression in strength. And I like what you said before, a strong mum is a healthy mum. Was that the exact phrase? I think I got that wrong.
For
A better mum,
sure.
better mum.
Strong mom is a better mom.
And
That's what I think.
I think that
My story.
applies to females in general. So, what I wanted to talk to you about was, what have you seen to be some of the benefits, from your powerlifting experience and, the time you've spent with the sport?
So much fun to be strong. I mean, it's the one thing where, you're not at all focused on aesthetics. It's about how you perform. So, and I'm 42 now, and for a very, very long time, I did the whole aesthetics thing because I did, fitness modeling, where it is about how you look, and it's about how your muscles pop and your tan and all that stuff. And this has nothing to do with that. Nobody cares if you have abs, and nobody cares if you have cellulite. And it's not about how you look; it's how you perform. And it's about, and for women, that's super empowering. Is gradually adding a little bit of weight to the bar every single time. It's about watching the numbers go up, and how even being heavier and having more body weight is like a really good thing, because that's more muscle, more mass means you can push more. So I think, and you're right. The last meet that I did was an all female meet, and the coolest thing about it was there were so many masters, like so many women above 40 who are participating, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's not. It tends to be obviously dominated by the gals who are in their 20s and they're the juniors and they're super, super strong. But it doesn't mean that just because you're not super, super strong, you can't participate in powerlifting. And I think that's the number one myth that, I don't know if it is for men, but for women is they'll say, well, I'm just not strong enough. I mean, I still think that way about myself. I don't never think that you're strong enough, but if that's your attitude, then you never do it. But I mean, you are, and that's great. I mean, at these meets, and there are women who are like in their 60s who they might just be squatting the bar, but everyone cheers for them just as hard as they're cheering for the gal who's squatting, over 400 pounds. I think it's really cool. So the fact that it's all about focusing on performance and accomplishment is a beautiful thing, because this is what we want to teach our kids too, is about, attaining little things, even if it takes us. And, again, with my daughter always around me, she comes to the meets and she's seen how I've performed every single time. And it's always just like this much more, a little bit more each time, but it's always progress. And it's always about putting in the work to see a benefit. So I think these are all really good things for moms and for women, especially for, little girls to see that sort of thing. And we see, even thanks to Instagram, there are, 8-year-olds who are outlifting me.
Yeah, I definitely think that both bodybuilding and powerlifting are sports that teach delayed gratification and learning to, put in the work for, many, many months, often years before you see just the smallest of improvements, which is, I think, a very, very important skill to pass on. And, what were some of the things that I guess you were fearful of when you first started powerlifting? You would have spoken about, I'm sure one of them earlier, in that, you just didn't think you were strong enough. But what were some of the other things, from a female's perspective, that you were worried about?
And so the first meet I went to, and the first weigh-in I went to, I was weighing in right after perhaps one of the strongest females I have ever met, and she was a beast, like just jacked and lean, and she was that perfect powerlifter build where they're just kind of like short, petite, and totally stacked, which is great. You have the right limb length for powerlifting, and I mean she's maybe all of 4'11", and then here I walk in right next to her, she's think about like somebody you're compressing down, and she's just all muscle, 140 pounds of like solid muscle, and here I am, 110 pounds, 5'5", and I looked at her and I'm like, I don't belong here. I felt like Bambi next to a beast, So that was one of the things, like, oh, what have I done? What have I signed up for? This is gonna be awful. I'm gonna be. Sure enough, I think I must have been opening with like the lightest squat. It didn't really matter. Because it was my first meet, I thought, oh man, I'm first to open on squat. I'm going to be the first to open on bench, probably the first on deadlift. So I was very concerned about where I was in relation to everybody else who was so much stronger. But as soon as I started lifting, none of that mattered. Like I was just having so much fun. It didn't matter. It didn't matter to me like what I was lifting, because people were so encouraging. I mean, even in the warm-up room, I was warming up with, I mean, the weights that I was warming up with were, I'm sure, a joke to the other girls there, but it didn't really matter. Nobody cared. Everybody was so helpful, you know, loading the bar, taking off the weights. Like it was such a positive first experience for me. And I actually ended up doing really well, which is great. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot from it. I made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't look at it like, oh my God, what a failure, because I just didn't have that mindset. I knew I'm going to learn something that's from no matter what. And I mean, I'm always amazed about the girls who can go in there and get 9 for 9 in their first meet. Like I screwed up on a lot of stuff. Like I missed commands and all that stuff that a lot of people do on their first meet, and even experienced lifters would do. I'm like, don't worry about it. We've done that before. So it's just a really supportive crowd of people. I mean, it is really nice to see more women in this sport.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's one of the most uplifting sports that I've been a part of, and you're totally right when saying that it is just competition against yourself at the end of the day, you know.
Yeah.
And there's not much more to it than that. If you just continue to beat your own lifts and get better and better over time, you know, you will achieve, you know, excellence by your own standards in the sport, and it's not necessarily too important what anyone else is lifting. So yeah, some awesome points there, Sumi. And the final thing I wanted to talk to you about was a little more diet related, but I guess it's kind of in tune to you know, developing strength and, you know, training for powerlifting, and that is the importance of gaining weight. So what I see quite a lot is the perpetual dieting cycle. That is, you know, people that are always trying to lose fat. They're always, you know, they're either on the diet, completely off the diet, and gaining weight. They're gaining weight, but a completely erratic and uncontrolled manner. And, you know, as you and I both know, weight gain at an appropriate rate based on, you know, your level of advancement, your goals, things like that, is a lot more difficult and still takes some degree of restraint for some people. But again, you know, like you were saying, the demographics that you work with, a lot of the women are likely wanting to slim down, but they can't always be in a deficit or even at maintenance, you know, all the time. There's going to be a period where they need to, you know, hey, we've got to eat a little more food now. It's time to gain a couple of kilos. You've lost 10. You know, we need to gain 1 or 2 and just, you know, get you healthy and make sure that you're not, you know, burning yourself out and running into the ground, so to speak. So how do you broach that? How do you start to teach women that weight gain is okay, and that, you know, it's something we need to learn if we want to improve our health, body composition, and strength long term?
I don't know who said it, but there's that saying that's kind of been bounced around on social media: you cannot sculpt a pebble. And I think a lot of women, I wish I knew, obviously hindsight's 2020, I wish I knew now what I knew then. Like when I was preparing for my very first Physique role, I think I had pulled out a photograph from like Oxygen magazine and like showed it to my coach. This is what I want to look like. And back then, I mean, this was 20 years ago. I did not have any measurable muscle mass. I just wanted to look like her and have the abs. You know, I had some semblance of muscle because I was generally athletic, but I don't have what I have now. But, you know, I'm 20 years down the line, and I wish I knew now what I knew then, which is, you know, it takes like at least 5 years or so of just progressively adding weight to the bar. I mean, it takes such a long time to build muscle, and none of that's going to happen in the deficit. Like the newbie gains are the best gains you're ever going to make. Like, you know, it's perfectly anabolic, right? It's like when the very first time that you're doing it, if I knew then, like I would have eaten so much, like I would have started off that path and I would have just added much more weight. Like now I'm 42 years old. I can't beat myself up the way I did when I was in my 20s. And that kind of recovery that you get when you're, you know, really young and you're just eating and you're lifting. And I think it was Eric Helms in one of these podcasts that said, you know, in the first 5 years, I mean, it's all about progressively adding body weight and weight to the bar. And I'm probably going to butcher what he said, but essentially is like, there's no sense in trying to cut down if in the first 5 years you haven't really built up anything. That's where the measurable strength progress is going to be made. The best years, I think. So, but you know, it's what good is it, dude? I can't talk to myself 20 years ago. But yeah. If somebody was to say to me, well, I want to look like this person, for instance, I could get some clients would be like, well, I want to look like you. Then I have to remind them, like, I have been doing this so long. It is so hard to put on muscle. It's so hard to put on weight, and to maintain a certain size, you have to keep on eating. Like I have the kind of body that's it's meant more for endurance. Like if I didn't lift weights and if I didn't eat as much as I did, I would be really small. Like my body likes to be very tiny and very lean, like that runner build, you know? So in order for me to keep any of that on, it's all about keeping the stimulus on all the time. So none of this is easy.
Awesome. And if there were three things that you would want to pass on to any mothers, three random piece of advice, experiences, or little tidbits that you've found useful, what would they be, Sumi?
Sorry, the dog distracted. Don't get a dog that's going to distract you, for one.
That's okay.
I think that being stronger obviously enables you to do a lot more as a mom. You know, if you're able to lift a certain amount of weight.
It's completely fine, Sumi.
Everything becomes easier when you're stronger. I mean, you know, you feel so empowered, the kind of strength that you get from being in the gym and knowing that you can do a certain thing and knowing that you can move your body in a certain way. Just it trickles down to all other corners of your life. You know, whether it's you feeling, you know, empowered to pick up the groceries or move, you know, furniture or throw something at the dog to keep them quiet. You know, all these things will help you. I think they trickle down to all aspects of your life, and not just weight training. Like one good habit I think tends to lead to another. So you started on like that one thing. It doesn't matter what it is. Like we look at fitness at like all these things that we have to do to be strong or to be healthy. But if you just do the one thing, and the one thing leads to another thing, which leads to another thing. These are all, I think, good things as a mom, and especially if you're raising children, you know, well, obviously if you're a mom, that's great. Thanks, dog.
That's okay, Sumi. The other day I was on a podcast with Brian Miner, and my daughter woke up, my eldest daughter, she runs in, she goes, "Daddy!" And Brian was like full, you know, he was going at it and doing his thing, and I was like, oh no, what do I do? But it's okay. It happens.
Well, I think you'd ask for a couple more things too, right? Which is, you know, obviously lift weights and be consistent. Things are going to take time. I think we need to preach that message that there's no quick fix. We all need to keep saying that again and again and again, because this is something that's always targeted towards moms, that there is something that they can do. Whether it's a juice cleanse or whatever, you know, whatever that's being marketed towards them. It's whatever it is, it's always going to take longer than you think, and it's always going to take more work than you want. But it's going to be worth it in the end, because those are the results that you're going to maintain. If you can do it, you know, via habits, I think that's a great thing, because these are the things that are going to stick with you longer than having to just, you know, quickly lose a bunch of weight and then wondering, how are you going to maintain it? Mm-hmm. You know, if you can do the juice thing for the rest of your life, great, but most likely you're not going to do that. So might as well get on a path that's more consistent and that, you know, you can do and that you can adhere to forever and ever.
Awesome, Sumi. Thank you so much. And guys, make sure you check the description box below. I'm going to link some of Sumi's work there. It's been a pleasure having you on, Sumi. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions for Sumi, make sure that you comment, and I'm sure that she'll engage with you all. She's fantastic on her social media and getting interactive with a lot of the people that she works with and the community as a whole. So thank you, Sumi.
I saw the baby in the back.
See, I told you. 7 o'clock. This was exactly when she came in, when she knows now.
I hope she's feeling better. Jacob, thank you so much for waking up so early in the morning to chat with me. I really appreciate it. You've had such terrific guests on your podcast, and really honored to be here. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you, Sumi.